Okay, so command blocks have been out since 2012, and it seems to me like a lot of people are either afraid of them, they hate them, or they think of them as this mysterious thing they never really want to touch. So while there are endless ways to use command blocks, I think that a lot of people still don't relate or don't see how they can use them. And I can say right off the bat that anyone who plays on a multiplayer world, anybody who owns a realm or plays on a local multiplayer LAN world, can use command blocks really effectively to have fun, to do pranks, to set rules, to do all sorts of really cool things. I often find myself building stuff in Redstone and then deciding to minimize them and see if I can find innovative ways to build them in command blocks. For now, I wanted to make this video about command blocks and explain everything that I know about it, or at least all the basic things that will get you going, so that not only can you start building your own things, but you will be able to understand all the videos that I make, which, as I've mentioned before, will be coming every single day at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I almost forgot there. Now, to get started on this, you're going to need a world with creative mode enabled and cheats allowed. These are the only requirements, but there are a couple recommendations that I'm going to explain as we go. So in order for me to properly describe what command blocks do and how to use them, I think it goes without saying that I need to explain commands a little bit. Because once you really get an idea of how commands work and what they do and how to work with coordinates, it'd probably be a lot easier for you to understand how to use a command block and how to use it creatively to do some really cool things. Okay, so now that we're ready, we're going to start with a few basic commands that prepare the world and make it really nice for us to work in. Now let's pull up the commands menu by pressing the / button on the keyboard. The first command I'm going to use here is time set day. Once you hit enter, the time is going to change to daytime. Next, we're going to get rid of the storm. We're going to do that by typing / weather space clear, then hitting enter. I also like to prevent the daylight cycle and the weather cycle so it never rains or becomes nighttime again. And you do this by typing / game rule do weather cycle space false. As you'll notice, I'm mistyping the command, but I usually guess at them, and as Minecraft suggests it, I can just press the tab button and it'll grab the correct command and type it for me. And then I can just press space and false and everything works out. The next command is game rule space do daylight cycle space false. And this is going to stop the daylight cycle. So these are basically all the commands that I use to set up a world and prepare it for me to build anything I want, whether it's redstone, command blocks, a house, anything. I decided to start with the fill command because it's the simplest and most useful of commands in my personal opinion. Now, if you've seen the fill command before, you'll know that it has coordinates and it depends a bit on your knowledge of using coordinates within Minecraft. However, since I figured that this is also one of the biggest obstacles to learning about command block, I decided that this tutorial was going to teach you that without really going into the details of coordinates. So I'm not going to have an x-axis and a y-axis and add and subtract and try to explain to you how these work. Instead, I'm going to have these different types of surfaces, a single block, a line, a plane surface, and a 3D structure, in addition to a grid structure which has two different kinds of blocks. In my opinion, demonstrating the fill command and the clone command on all of these different structures to achieve a simple goal is going to not only show you how to use these commands, but it's also going to teach you a good deal about coordinates and how you can use them. I'm also hopeful that by the end of this tutorial, you'll know how to use relative coordinates so you can create command blocks that you can copy and use in other places without having to rewrite the command or change it at all. So let's just go ahead and get started on that fill command. So in order to make this as easy as possible, we're going to point our cursor at the block we want to fill. Then we're going to type / fill space. And at this moment, we're going to see a suggested number here. And this suggested number is actually the first number of the coordinates of this block. So all we have to do is either copy it down or hit the tab button. So you hit the tab button 3 times and this will give you the coordinates for this block. Now you hit space and the fill command requires 2 sets of coordinates, so you're going to hit tab 3 times because all we're trying to fill is this single block. So now that we've gotten the coordinates twice, marking the beginning and the end of the region to fill, which begins and ends in the same block, we hit space and we can pick any type of block that's available in Minecraft to fill in this spot. We can type it out, We can look through this list that Minecraft suggests, and I'm also going to put a link in the description to a page that has a list of all the available materials, so you can reference it if you're ever not sure of the spelling or anything like that. Now, there's an important and quick thing I want to show you here that will make a huge difference in the process. Note that if you hit / and then hit the up arrow on your keyboard, you're going to see the last command that we entered here. And this is, like I said, it's an extremely valuable feature, so keep it in mind because we're about to use it right now. So in order to copy a row of blocks, all you need to do is point at the first block, hit / and type fill space, tab 3 times to grab the coordinates of the first block, and then hit enter. What you're going to see is an error, and this is normal because we have entered a half-finished command and Minecraft doesn't know what to do. But now we're going to tell it what to do. We're going to move over to the last block of the row. We're going to hit / again, and now we're going to hit the up button on the keyboard and tab 3 times to grab the coordinates of this second block right here. And now we have the command completed, and all we need to do is hit space and enter the material that we want to use and hit enter. And this is going to finish the command. And now we can move on to this two-dimensional plane where the fill mechanism is going to be a little different, but essentially it's going to be the same. We're going to start at the first block, and again, this can be any block as long as we keep in mind what the next step is going to be. So we're going to start at this first block right here. We're going to type / fill space, and then we're going to tab 3 times to get the coordinates of this block and hit enter to save it and get that error message as usual. Now where we need to go is the opposite corner. And when we pick the opposite corner, it's going to tell it that this is the rectangle that needs to be filled. We enter the material and hit enter, and it's successfully filled. Next, we move on to a very similar structure that's actually standing up on its side. As usual, we're going to type in the fill command, tab 3 times, and then we're going to move on to the next spot, tab 3 times again to the saved command, and then enter the material that we want to use. So we're going to move on to this 3D structure, and we're going to start at the lower left block here and do what we've learned so far. Next, we're going to move to the other side and to the tallest block and do the same thing, and now we have the structure defined. Now we can simply enter the material and fill this with whatever we want. And while this set of commands can be used to achieve a lot of things in Minecraft and you don't really need to worry about many more things just yet, there's one more version of this command that I want to show you that's going to help explaining one of the command blocks later. And it's also very useful and very fun and can be used in a lot of advanced and simple creations. So let's go ahead and look at this tiny chessboard here. So we're going to start by typing fill and getting the coordinates of the first block as usual, and then we're going to get the coordinates of the opposite block exactly as if we're doing a normal command, and we're even going to type in the material we want to put in right away. The only difference is that we're going to keep going and we're going to write replace, and then we're going to say what we want to replace. So in this case, I'm going to pick white concrete, which means that the yellow concrete that I'm adding is going to take the place of the white concrete in between these two coordinates. And this is really nice because it gives you a lot more control over your project, and it's also going to come in handy when we're talking about conditional command blocks a little bit later in the video. Alright, so now that we've looked at the fill command and some of the very common situations where you can use it, it's time to dive into the clone command. But there are some preparations that I like to recommend to you, which I do every single time, because once you prepare yourself for the cloning, you're going to be able to avoid mistakes, you're going to be able to enjoy the process without dealing with a whole bunch of trouble. It's nothing too crazy really. All you need to do is press the F3 button on your keyboard, and you're going to see all this information appear on your screen. You may have worked with this in the past to get your coordinates or anything like that, but what we're doing here is very simple. On the left side, you're going to look for the label that says facing, because we're trying to determine our direction. Now obviously you can clone facing any direction you want, but I'd like to define a basic direction that we point to that will help us know where everything is going to appear. And for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to face east. Keep in mind that if you also face east when you're cloning, you're going to have exactly the same results as I am. Facing east means the label is going to read east, and next to it is going to say negative 90 degrees. If it says negative 90 point whatever number, that's not going to matter because Minecraft is just a bunch of blocks and you're going to be pointed in the right direction anyway. If you have any questions or feel a little bit confused, just keep in mind that we're going to clone all of these things ahead and you'll definitely see how this thing works. Now we're going to start our cloning process, and just like what we did with Phil, we're going to do it for each one of these structures to see the differences. We're going to point at this block, type /clone, and then tab 3 times, and then space, tab 3 times, and this way we've gotten the coordinates of this block twice. And now we're going to hit enter so that we save the command, and as we're used to, we're going to get an error this time. Now we're going to go place a block and point at it and get its coordinates because we want the block to be cloned over the surface. I don't want it to be underground. So I'm going to point at this block, and as you see, my block is going to come here. Now, there doesn't need to be a block here. I'm just using it to get the coordinates of this spot. Now on to the next structure. We're going to type /clone. We're going to type space, tab 3 times, and then hit enter to save the coordinates of this first block. Then we're going to move over to the last block and pull up the command menu, type tab 3 times, and then click it again, saving the command with both coordinates. And now we're going to count the blocks and make sure that we're going to place the new clone spot in a place where it doesn't overlap with our original structure. Of course, Minecraft wouldn't let you do that, but you want to know where it's going to land so you can avoid it overlapping with anything precious as well. And much like the last one, this new structure is going to be cloned exactly the same way. We're going to point at the same block. We're going to type /clone, space, we're going to tab 3 times, and then we're going to move over to the opposite block, the exact same block we used for the fill command, and we're going to bring up the command we just stored, and we're going to tab 3 times and get the coordinates of the second block. And now let's go ahead and clone the structure right here by placing a block and getting its coordinates as usual. And next we're going to do this guy where just exactly the same way we're going to get the coordinates of the lower left corner and then the upper right corner, and then we're going to place a block and clone the structure right here on the side. And finally, we're going to approach this 3D structure, which is, in my opinion, a bit more important than the others because it applies a lot more to the stuff that we clone. Now this one we're actually going to revisit because it's going to be the command we're using for our first command block, which we're getting really close to, so you should be getting excited. Alright, so now that we have a basic understanding of the fill and clone commands, we can go ahead and start experimenting with some command blocks. I laid down a few command blocks here with different setups to show you how you can use them in different conditions. Now before we get started, I want to remind you that in order to get a command block, you have to be in creative mode and you have to type the following command: /give @p command_block. And this is going to give you the command block. There's no other way in the game to get it unless you type the give command and give it to yourself. Now once you have the command block and place it down, you're going to have this basic command block that we're going to start with. So when you right-click the command block, you're going to see this panel which shows you all the configurations that you can apply in here. There's a text box up top for the command that you're going to type or paste in here. There are 3 different toggles that you can choose different configurations from, and this is why I have different command blocks set up here. And then finally you have your cancel and done buttons. So when you place a command block, by default is going to be set to impulse, unconditional, and needs redstone. This means that it needs redstone to work and is going to only fire once and go quiet. So for this first command block, we're going to use the clone command that we use up there for the 3D structure from earlier to see how it works. Once we paste the command in here, we can hit the done button. Now let me go destroy this structure just to make sure that it's working because even though it's going to prompt us, I'm not going to believe it unless I see it. And then we can go press this button and we'll see the structure appearing instantly. One of the earliest questions that I had when I started using command blocks was, what if I needed to run more than one command at once? And the solution I came up with at the time was using repeaters. I would just line up repeaters and delay them, and I kept doing that up until very recently. But then I learned about chained command blocks, and they are the proper way to do what I just described. Repeaters are still fine if you want to have some time between them. There are also other ways and more complex commands to get that effect without using repeaters, but if you're just starting out, it makes perfect sense to put a repeater between two command blocks that you want to have some time delay in between. But for our next test, we're going to use a chained command which runs immediately after the first one, and it's not gonna seem like it takes any time at all. Creating a chained command block is very simple, but you have to pay very close attention to the arrows on the side of the command block. Now, these arrows are always going to point in your direction. The next thing we need to do is right-click this new command block and then change the first option to chain and then the last one to always active. Now, there are some ways where you will have a chained command block set to needs redstone, but these are extremely specific and highly technical and maybe not needed in a giant computer project, so don't even worry about that for now. Whenever you set a chained command block, put it on always active. Now, this setup basically means that the first command block is going to run and then the second one is going to run. Regardless of what is written in there, what happens in the first one, the second one is going to run at the click of that button, and we're going to test that right away. We're going to have the first command block do the same clone that we had the earlier command block do, and then we're going to have the chained command block just say hi to us. And now when we press the button, you'll see that that structure will appear and Minecraft is going to say hi to us. Hi, Minecraft. You may not think that you need chained command blocks at the moment, and you probably don't, but the moment you start to do something like use a fill command to create a door or something, you're going to realize that having another one do something right after is going to be really useful. So when that day comes, remember this tutorial and come back to it if you don't want to just, think about this too much right now. The next command block we're going to cover is going to be the chained conditional command block. This one gets more advanced and you're going to need it less probably. However, it's really cool and can let you do some very advanced things or some very fun things. The only thing we're going to change is that the second command block is going to be set to chained and conditional. And what this means, very simply, is that the command in the first command block has to execute correctly. Now, if you'll recall, when we worked on the chessboard setup earlier, we used a fill command with the replace tag, and back then it replaced the white concrete with yellow concrete. Now, let's say we put this in the first command block and we tell it to replace one thing for another. This is a very good use case for this type of command block because if the command does not find the requested block to replace and it doesn't do anything, then the second command block is not going to say hi to us, which is what we're going to ask it to do. If it does indeed find the block to replace and it does it successfully, the second command block is going to say hi to us. So the simplest use case for this is you can have something that tells you when something is done. When the first command is done, the second one tells you. But there are so many other use cases for it. You can go as technical as you want. This is just the very basic setup of this chained conditional command block. Now, I hope you haven't gotten bored by this time, and I know this is probably really crazy to ask after this long in the tutorial. But keep in mind that the next two command blocks, the ones that are set to repeat, are probably the most fun and the ones that I use most in my creations. So the first command block we're going to work with is going to be set to repeat and always active. And this means that whatever the command that's placed in there is going to be running indefinitely. Now, Minecraft is smart in a way in that if the command can't run because it already happened, for example, if we tell a block that has a red concrete block to be filled with red concrete, nothing is going to happen. It's not going to lag your computer or keep running the command over and over, which makes it a good way to do something like this. For example, we're going to put a fill command for a block right here. And the moment the command block starts, this block is going to appear and it's going to be unbreakable. We can break it as much as we want, it's going to reappear. Now, this is cool and all in theory, but what kind of application can we get from it? What can we use it to have fun with? Now, just right off the bat, because these are unlimited blocks right here, we can simply place a piston behind this block, place a button, and every single time we press this piston, a new block is going to be generated. This tells me that you can use it to create a self-building house. You can create some kind of really cool structure or conveyor belt or whatever it is. I mean, there are so many different things you can do with it. Now, the final one is not too different from the one before. It's also set to repeat, but it's set to need redstone. So here, what this means is, while this block has redstone coming into it, it's going to be repeatedly creating the option. So for example, if we're using the command from the previous command block that just creates a block here, this block is going to be indestructible as long as the command block has redstone flowing through it. Whenever we turn the lever and we try to break the block, it's going to break as usual. So this is kind of cool, where you have an unbreakable wall that you can toggle on and off. And obviously this is the simplest application of it. And now that we've covered all the different types of command blocks and all of these commands, and I've given you all of this information, I think that it's time to talk just a little bit about relative coordinates. Because the moment you know about relative coordinates, all of these commands are just going to become 10 times more powerful with a command block. Now here's what a relative coordinate is in short. When you have this little tilde sign, what it means is this is the current location. So if you're typing this sign in the chat button where you put a command at the bottom, you're saying this is my location. So 3 tildes means the coordinates of the player who is typing the command. Now if you put these tildes in a command block, what it means is these are the coordinates of this command block. So remember when I mentioned earlier in the video that if you increase the middle number in the coordinates, you're going to go up. If you want to subtract and go lower, you're just going to have to put a little minus sign. The best way to tell what the relative coordinate is to the command block is to follow the same way we use the fill command. You hit /, type fill, and then tab 3 times, and this will give you the coordinates of the command block. And then you go to the place where you want to do whatever you want to do, and then use it as the second coordinate for the fill command, and don't fill it with anything. Just look at these two numbers and see which one changes, and you're going to do the math to compare the numbers between, the first one is the command block and the second one is your destination. So you go to the first number on the first one and you go to the first one on the second one and you just type out the difference and put the tilde sign next to it. If the second one is above, the middle number is going to have a 1. If it's below, it's going to have a -1. I put up these little columns here so you can see them for reference and you know which way you go for negative and positive. But like I said, it's always best to just use the fill command, find the coordinates for these two blocks, and do your own calculation, because usually it's going to be too specific for you to depend on my little instructions. And now there's one last thing that I wanted to show you before we're done, and that's the execute command. And I wanted to show it to you because the clone and fill commands are great and all, but once you combine them with the example of the execute command that I'm going to provide you, you're going to be able to do much more fun and much more complex things. So let's just jump right into it. So without further ado, here's the syntax we're going to type. It's going to say execute positioned, and we're going to give the coordinates of the spot that's right in the middle at P. And this one is basically telling it, check if the player is positioned, and we're going to say the distance, and then we're going to set the distance to 2 or 3 blocks away from it. Now I want you to pay very close attention to these 2 dots that I placed before the 2, before I spent a good number of hours not knowing why a command isn't working, and it was these 2 dots that they were missing. So make sure you put them here. And once you do that, you put the words run, and at this point you can literally put any command you like. In this case, I'm going to use the place sound command, but you can do anything. You can place redstone blocks and fire pistons. You can send messages. Literally, the sky is the limit. So if you're going to do an execute command to detect the position of a player, it's very likely that you're going to need the command block to be set to repeat and always active, because otherwise you're going to need to give it a redstone signal to do what it needs to do. Now again, I know the execute command is very, very complex, and I don't really know if this was very helpful, me telling you this right now, but if it is, let me know, and if you need more information on it, again, please feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to include some links and some more details in the description, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. And with this, I have told you everything I needed to say about commands and command blocks for this introductory tutorial. If you have enjoyed it or learned something from it today, please consider subscribing, and remember that I will be releasing another video tomorrow at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time and every day after that at the same time. So until then, have a great rest of your day.